Before we existed, they created the sun. The sun has always been seen as the giver of life, the eternal flame around which our entire existence revolves. To us, it is ancient, natural, and self-created, a ball of fire that has burned for billions of years, born from the chaos of cosmic dust and gravity. But what if that belief has been wrong all along? What if the sun, the very source of life, was not born by chance, but built with purpose? It began as a small anomaly, buried in mountains of data no one cared to look at twice. In the year 2029, a research team from the Solar Dynamics Observatory detected something inside the sun's corona, a pattern of electromagnetic pulses that repeated every 142 minutes with perfect mathematical precision. At first, it was dismissed as interference, the usual static of solar radiation. But when the pattern reappeared in harmonic intervals matching the Fibonacci sequence, the researchers realized they weren't looking at a random natural fluctuation. They were staring at an engineered rhythm. The deeper they analyzed it, the stranger it became. The energy bursts formed a symmetrical resonance curve, identical to what happens in controlled plasma reactors. The sun, by every physical definition, was acting like a stabilized fusion system, not a chaotic star. No known model of stellar physics could explain it. Something or someone had tuned the star's inner frequencies long before human life ever appeared. At first, the team stayed silent. The scientific community would never accept something that implied intelligent design on a cosmic scale. But the silence broke when similar signatures appeared in other stars, one orbiting Kepler 18.6f, another in the distant red giant Epsilon Eridani. Each emitted the same coded intervals, the same harmonic sequence, as if a single hand had calibrated them all across the galaxy. Whispers began spreading through the scientific world. Some called it the star code. Others warned it was nothing more than data misinterpretation, a coincidence amplified by human imagination. But there was one problem no skeptic could explain. The pattern's ratio perfectly matched the energy harmonics of man-made fusion reactors. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Hidden beneath layers of ancient light, it was as if the sun was whispering a story, not of natural birth, but of creation. A creation too vast, too powerful, and too deliberate to be ours. And then came the oldest connection of all, mythology. Every civilization across time spoke of gods who brought light to the sky. The Egyptians called him Ra, the Sumerians named him Utu, the Mayans worshipped Kinich Ahau. Different names, different eras, yet one identical idea, a being or civilization that created the sun. For centuries, these were dismissed as primitive myths. But what if those myths were memories, fragments of truth passed down through the collapse of forgotten ages? Historians and physicists began to notice strange parallels. The geometric patterns found in ancient temples, concentric circles within triangles, mirrored the same energy resonance observed in the sun's harmonic data. Across continents, from the pyramids of Egypt to the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the same symbols reappeared, as though the builders had known the structure of solar energy long before modern science. The connection was undeniable. These weren't coincidences, they were remnants. Remnants of a knowledge older than humanity itself. And if that was true, it meant only one thing. Before we existed, someone else was here. Someone capable of manipulating the very forces that birth stars. Someone powerful enough to ignite a sun. As the investigation deepened, government agencies quietly restricted access to the original data. The Solar Dynamics team was disbanded. Official statements claimed the readings were due to instrument calibration errors. But leaked internal memos told another story. The anomalies were real and far more significant than anyone had dared to admit publicly. In one of the final leaked reports, a single sentence stood out. It read, "The sun is not behaving like a natural star. It's maintaining balance as if under active regulation." That was the moment everything changed. The scientists had stumbled upon something that defied the laws of nature and rewrote the history of creation itself. If the sun was once built, or modified, then whoever did it wasn't just a civilization. They were architects of energy, creators of stars. And maybe, just maybe, they didn't vanish. Maybe they left traces of themselves, encoded in the heart of the very light that sustains our world. But if that's true, it raises one question humanity has never been ready to face. What happens when the machine that powers our existence finally turns off? The revelation that the sun might be artificial sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The star code, initially dismissed as statistical noise, had become the focus of a quiet but relentless pursuit. Researchers combed through archives, satellite data, and ancient astronomical records, searching for patterns that might confirm the impossible, that the sun, and perhaps other stars, bore the fingerprints of an intelligence far beyond humanity. It was in the archives of the European Southern Observatory that the first hints emerged. Gamma-ray bursts recorded over the last century displayed the same harmonic intervals detected in our sun. Then came the Kepler telescope data. Stars in distant solar systems, previously considered ordinary, were suddenly behaving unnaturally. Their energy output, rotation, and spectral emission suggested regulation, almost as if the stars themselves were carefully calibrated instruments. Physicists struggled to explain the phenomenon. Standard models of stellar evolution could not account for stars maintaining equilibrium across millions of years with such precision. Some proposed exotic forms of plasma physics, quantum anomalies, or dark matter interactions, but the numbers did not lie. The energy sequences resembled deliberately constructed systems. They bore the hallmarks of intentional design. The more the team investigated, the more the universe seemed alive with traces of an ancient, incomprehensible power. Patterns of energy emission matched strange structures on Earth, megalithic alignments, pyramids, and temples, suggesting a link between human myth, cosmic architecture, and the star code. Could these ancient civilizations have known more than we ever imagined? Could they have inherited fragments of knowledge from a predecessor civilization that shaped the very stars? Archaeologists began re-examining the oldest ruins in light of these discoveries. In the deserts of Egypt, the orientation of the Great Pyramid of Giza, long thought to align with cardinal points and certain stars, revealed a more subtle precision. The pyramid's internal chambers seemed to mirror the harmonic ratios found in the sun. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats and temple carvings depicted concentric circles and geometric forms that appeared to encode numerical sequences now found in the solar data. Across the globe, from the Nazca lines in South America to the stone circles of Europe, the same enigmatic patterns appeared. It was as if a forgotten intelligence had left markers, guiding those who came later. The evidence began to suggest a staggering possibility. Long before humans existed, a civilization of extraordinary power had mastered forces that we are only now beginning to understand. They could manipulate energy on a cosmic scale, regulate stars, and possibly travel between worlds. Humanity had only discovered fire, yet these beings had forged the very light that makes life possible. Some scientists proposed a term for them: the architects of light. They were not gods in the mythological sense, but entities whose technology and knowledge transcended comprehension. To them, a star was not a celestial object to be worshipped. It was a tool, a mechanism for creation, perhaps even a vessel for life itself. In the Pacific Northwest, an isolated team studying ancient rock carvings found symbols that resembled the sequences from the star code. The patterns, etched millennia ago, were aligned with solstices, eclipses, and planetary positions, as if whoever created them understood the motion of planets and the energy dynamics of the stars. The deeper the archaeologists delved, the more evidence suggested intentionality, a deliberate act to encode knowledge that would survive the rise and fall of civilizations. As the scientific and archaeological threads converged, a hypothesis began to form. Perhaps the sun was not an isolated experiment. Perhaps there had been many such experiments across the universe, each guided by these architects of light. The traces we detect today, encoded patterns, harmonic emissions, geometric alignments, are all that remain of a civilization whose influence extended far beyond a single planet. Computer simulations attempted to reconstruct what such a civilization might have been capable of. To maintain a star's stability, one would need to control energy outputs equivalent to billions of nuclear reactions every second. To regulate multiple stars, as the star code suggested, would require a mastery of physics and engineering that borders on the divine. It was no longer a question of whether they existed. It was a question of how and why they acted. In their pursuit of answers, researchers stumbled upon a disturbing revelation. Certain frequencies within the star code carried information. Not language as we know it, but patterns of instruction embedded in energy itself. It was as if the stars were not just glowing, but communicating. Were these instructions for maintaining stability, or something far more profound? A blueprint for life, for creation itself? The implications were staggering. Humanity, in its infancy, had arrived in a universe already meticulously designed, shaped by a civilization that left not only stars, but instructions encoded in those stars. And as the researchers pieced together the signals, they realized the scope of what had been discovered. This was not mythology. This was evidence of intelligence older and more powerful than anything humanity had ever imagined. Every discovery pointed to one unavoidable conclusion. The sun and the stars were not merely natural phenomena. They were artifacts of an intelligence that preceded us, guiding, shaping, and possibly observing the evolution of life across the cosmos. The traces of this ancient power were not hidden in some distant corner of the universe. They were in every photon that reached the Earth, in every ray of sunlight, in every shadow cast by the dawn. And as the team studied these signals, it became clear that the traces were intentional. They were not random echoes of a forgotten past. They were messages, left deliberately, waiting for beings capable of understanding. Perhaps this was the greatest act of foresight, a civilization that, before humanity even existed, ensured that knowledge of their existence and their power could survive for eons, embedded in the very stars themselves. For the first time, humanity faced a reality more profound than any myth or theory. Before us, before life as we know it, there had been beings who not only understood the universe but shaped it. They left a legacy so vast that it would take millennia for us to comprehend even a fraction of it. The stars were alive, the sun was intentional, and the history we thought we knew was only the beginning of a story that had been unfolding long before we ever existed. And within that story lay a question more terrifying and exhilarating than any we had ever asked. If they had created the sun, had they also created us? Or were we merely a byproduct of their design? As humanity's understanding of the star code deepened, a vision began to emerge. A vision of beings so advanced that their comprehension of energy, matter, and life itself dwarfed our own. Scientists and historians began to refer to them simply as the architects of light. These were not gods, though their abilities seemed divine. They were engineers of existence, capable of shaping stars and orchestrating the flow of cosmic energy with precision that defied imagination. Evidence suggested that these architects did not remain bound to a single planet. Across the galaxy, subtle markers, encoded signals, geometric alignments, and energy harmonics hinted at a civilization that had moved through the cosmos, leaving traces of its presence embedded in stars and planetary systems alike. The sun, it seemed, was not the result of natural forces alone. It was a creation, a carefully maintained machine designed to sustain life on a planet that would not exist for billions of years. The question that haunted researchers was not if the architects existed, but why? Why create a star? And why choose Earth as its beneficiary? Some theorized that they had seeded life across the cosmos, planting the building blocks of existence in carefully chosen worlds. Others suggested a more practical motive. They were experimenting with energy systems at a scale beyond our understanding, and the emergence of life on Earth was a fortunate consequence of their work. Yet, the evidence hinted at intention, not chance. Archaeologists revisited ancient myths, now through the lens of this new discovery. Egyptian texts described Ra's journey across the sky, but they contained hidden references, sequences of numbers and measurements that matched the harmonic ratios found in the sun. In South America, the Nazca lines, once thought to be ceremonial art, were reinterpreted as large-scale energy diagrams, potentially reflecting the principles used to manipulate stellar energy. Similar markings were found in the temples of Angkor, in the stone circles of Scotland, and in forgotten ruins scattered across Asia and Africa. Across time and culture, a consistent theme emerged. These civilizations, separated by thousands of miles and centuries, had preserved fragments of knowledge that pointed to an intelligence far older and more powerful than their own. Physicists began modeling what such an act would entail. To build or regulate a star, one must control unimaginable energy flows. balancing nuclear fusion reactions, magnetic fields, and gravitational forces on a scale far beyond our most advanced technology. For the architects, this was not merely engineering, it was creation. They did not simply harness energy, they directed it, shaped it, and wove it into a living structure. The sun was alive in a sense humans could not yet comprehend, a machine designed to nurture and sustain life, yet also to encode messages across light years. These messages were subtle but persistent. Patterns in solar emissions, variations in magnetic flux, and modulations of solar neutrinos all hinted at information encoded within the very energy of the sun. Some scientists proposed that these were instructions for maintaining stability, guidance for future civilizations, or even a record of the architect's existence. Others dared to speculate that it might be a blueprint for life itself, left embedded in starlight, awaiting those capable of decoding it. The realization was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Humanity was not alone in its origins. It was the inheritor of a design that predated our species by eons. We were born into a cosmos already curated, carefully maintained, and intentionally guided. The sun, our life-giving star, was not simply a celestial body, it was a legacy. And yet, the architects themselves were conspicuously absent. There was no evidence of their presence on Earth, no artifacts that could be definitively attributed to them. Their creations were the stars, the energy patterns, and the echoes of knowledge preserved in myth and geometry. They had left, perhaps intentionally, allowing life to emerge, grow, and eventually discover the traces of their handiwork. The implications extended beyond science. Philosophers and theologians grappled with the notion that our existence might not be accidental, but the result of deliberate design by a civilization that had long since departed. If humanity was a product of cosmic engineering, what did that say about free will, destiny, and our role in the universe? Were we simply observers, inheritors of a legacy we had yet to comprehend, or participants in a larger plan set in motion billions of years before our species existed? In laboratories and observatories around the world, researchers began constructing simulations to test the possibilities. They modeled stars with artificial regulation, incorporating harmonic energy sequences to see if life-supporting conditions could emerge naturally. Every simulation confirmed a staggering reality. The sun's stability, its energy output, and its ability to sustain life were extraordinarily precise, far beyond what random natural processes could explain. The numbers aligned too perfectly. The sun was engineered, and its creators had planned for the emergence of life long before the first humans walked the earth. The more humanity learned, the more profound the mystery became. These architects had not only mastered the creation of stars, but had anticipated the evolution of civilizations capable of interpreting their work. They had hidden knowledge in plain sight, scattered across myths, monuments, and the very fabric of stellar energy. Every beam of sunlight, every solar flare, every subtle variation in the sun's rhythm carried a message, a fragment of intelligence waiting to be understood. And as scientists continued to decode the patterns, a haunting question emerged. If the architects had departed, leaving behind such an intricate legacy, had they intended for humanity to eventually discover it? Or were we simply uncovering remnants of a power far greater than ourselves, too vast to fully comprehend? In that quiet moment of revelation, under the pale light of our engineered star, it became clear that humanity's story was only a chapter in a much grander narrative. The universe had been shaped by beings who understood the principles of creation at a level we could scarcely imagine. The architects of light had left behind stars, signals, and patterns, guiding the emergence of life, encoding knowledge, and perhaps testing the readiness of future civilizations. And while they remained unseen, their presence was undeniable. The sun itself, our most familiar celestial companion, bore witness to their mastery, a living testament to a power that had existed long before we did, a civilization that not only created light, but had envisioned the beings who would one day stand beneath it and wonder. The realization that the sun itself may be a creation of an ancient civilization reshaped the way humanity viewed its place in the cosmos. For millennia, we had believed ourselves at the center of existence, yet suddenly we found ourselves inheritors of a legacy far older and more deliberate than any human endeavor. The architects of light, as scientists now called them, had left traces across the galaxy, embedding knowledge and energy into the very stars that would one day nurture intelligent life. Their work was a silent gift, or perhaps a test, and humanity was only beginning to understand its significance. Researchers began searching for additional evidence, not only in the stars, but on Earth itself. They scrutinized ancient monuments, myths, and texts for patterns that aligned with the harmonic sequences found in solar emissions. In every corner of the world, from the pyramids of Egypt to the stone circles of Europe and the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, there were echoes of these sequences. The symbols, often dismissed as decorative or ceremonial, now appeared to encode mathematical constants, energy ratios, and geometries that reflected cosmic engineering principles. It was as if the architects had left a breadcrumb trail, guiding those capable of interpretation toward understanding the sun's true nature. The implications were staggering. Humanity was no longer a random accident of evolution, but a participant in a carefully orchestrated cosmic experiment. Life on Earth had emerged under a sun whose stability, light, and energy output were maintained by the legacy of an intelligence long vanished. Our very survival, our seasons, our climate, all had been shaped with intention. The universe had not been indifferent. It had been meticulously curated. Scientists theorized that the architect's influence extended beyond the sun. Stars throughout the galaxy, exhibiting subtle energy harmonics and encoded signals, suggested a deliberate plan to shape life in multiple star systems. The star code was not isolated. It was part of a vast network, a galaxy-spanning system of creation and preservation. Whoever had engineered it understood energy, life, and information in ways humanity could scarcely comprehend. Despite the evidence, one question persisted. Why leave humanity to discover the truth only billions of years later? Perhaps the architects understood the evolutionary trajectory of life, knowing that only a species with sufficient intelligence and curiosity would be able to decode their messages. The sun, in this sense, was both cradle and archive, nurturing life while simultaneously transmitting information through light, resonance, and energy patterns. Every photon that reached Earth might carry a fragment of their legacy, a message encoded in the very essence of the star. Philosophers began to grapple with the existential consequences. If life on Earth had been seated under a sun that was intentionally maintained, then free will, destiny, and purpose took on new dimensions. Were humans truly autonomous? Or were we participants in a design that had been set in motion long before our species existed? And if the architects had engineered the sun with such foresight, what else might they have engineered? Galaxies, planetary systems, even consciousness itself. The deeper humanity looked, the more questions arose. In the deserts of South America, researchers discovered Nazca-like patterns that, when analyzed through the lens of the star code, mirrored energy flows within stars. In Asia, ancient temples oriented toward solstices and equinoxes revealed precise mathematical relationships with solar cycles. These were not isolated coincidences. They were evidence that the architects had not only shaped stars, but had encoded their knowledge across time and space, anticipating that intelligent life would eventually emerge to perceive it. Simulations of stellar mechanics confirmed a chilling truth. The sun's stability is extraordinary. Random chance alone could not account for its consistent energy output over billions of years. Its harmonic patterns suggested regulation by forces beyond natural processes, reinforcing the notion that the sun is more than a star. It is a living artifact of an intelligence capable of shaping existence itself. As humanity absorbed this knowledge, the implications for the future became impossible to ignore. Could we, too, learn to harness the principles embedded in the star code? Could the sun teach us how to manipulate energy on a cosmic scale, or even how to create life? And if so, what responsibilities would come with such power? The legacy of the architects was not just a history lesson. It was a challenge, a blueprint for the next stage of civilization. In quiet observatories and research centers, as scientists continued to decode the patterns hidden in starlight, a humbling realization emerged. The sun, which had always seemed constant and eternal, was a monument to ingenuity far beyond our own. Its light carried stories older than humanity, knowledge older than the earth, and a message for those capable of understanding. It was a testament to beings who existed before us, who shaped our reality, and who perhaps still watched from afar. And as night fell and the first rays of dawn touched the earth, it became clear that every day we live under the sun is not just the passing of time. It is a continuation of a legacy, a silent dialogue with architects of light who left the universe itself as their canvas. We are heirs to their work, and the questions they left behind challenge us to look beyond the familiar, to imagine the unimaginable, and to confront a universe that is far more deliberate, more mysterious, and more alive than we ever dared believe. Humanity stands at a threshold. We can study, we can explore, and perhaps one day we can understand. But for now, the sun rises each morning as both giver of life and keeper of secrets. And in its brilliance, the story of those who existed before us whispers across the ages, reminding us that we are part of something far greater than ourselves, a legacy written in light, energy, and the infinite vastness of the cosmos.